I would like to welcome you, Siobhan, to be presenting today. So, Siobhan is presenting on behalf of Louise and Sonja as well, all from the University of Western Australia. Their presentation title today is called Using Alma and Primo VE Configurations to Deliver Sensitive Password Information. And a quick intro for the teams that Louise, Sonja, and Siobhan are joining us, of course, from University of WA, having started the institution in 1997, 2014, and 2017, respectively. Louise is the coordinator of the subscriptions team and oversees a whole series of activities in the subscriptions portfolio, amongst a number of other critical activities. Or Sonja and Siobhan are currently subscription librarians, all of which brings us to their presentation today. So Siobhan, I'm going to mute and turn off my camera, and I'll leave it with you to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Sean. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Siobhan Sullivan, and I'll be presenting on work Louise, Sonja and I undertook to deliver sensitive password information using Alma and Primo VE configurations. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm situated on Noongar land and that Noongar people remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs and knowledge. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands on which I live and work across Western Australia and the traditional owners of the lands from wherever you are joining from today. So by way of an introduction, UWA Library has been using Primo since 2010 and Alma since December 2014. We moved to Primo VE in 2018 as early adopters, and our Primo VE has been branded as OneSearch. So you'll hear me refer to OneSearch and Primo VE interchangeably throughout this presentation. So UWA Library subscribes to a small number of electronic resources which require institutional logins, corporate keys, or complicated steps to access. Unfortunately, our users are unable to access these electronic resources using our regular methods of authentication. Normally, we'd be relying on Open Athens. So we do have a need to display this password information in a sensitive manner, ensuring only authorised users are able to access. Previously, so up until late last year, institutional login details were provided via standalone web pages called password information pages, PIPs for short. We had one PIP per resource, and the URL for the PIP was added as an override URL at the electronic collection level. So this meant that authenticated users would be redirected to the PIP when they clicked on the electronic service links in OneSearch, whereas unauthorised users would receive an access denied message. Last year, we were advised that the server which hosted these standalone web pages would be decommissioned by UWA IT. We therefore needed a new method to deliver this sensitive password information. We had a fairly short time frame to identify a solution, and so we discussed with UWA IT potential solutions. And we considered hosting password information in the Alma viewer, on Microsoft Teams sites, or on standalone UWA web pages again. Unfortunately, none of these options were viable. So hosting the information in Alma provided a poor user experience, as instructions and then the resource would open within the small Alma viewer rather than in a new browser window. Microsoft Teams sites had the advantage of being within the control of UWA Library staff, but it didn't seem feasible for our team to manage these. We would have needed to ensure that all UWA users were added to the workspace, all UWA staff, students, visitors, etc. And then we also would have needed to ensure that users were removed once they graduated or left UWA. As well, the Teams pages were quite difficult to create and edit. Standalone UWA web pages were no longer considered an option because these would now need to be managed by the digital channel team, who are external to the library, and they're based in brand and marketing. And in short, they weren't very supportive of this idea, And we also weren't supportive of it because we didn't want to be in the situation again where we wouldn't be able to create, edit, or manage these pages ourselves. So we knew that we wanted a solution which could be managed within UWA Library without relying on external units like IT or brand and marketing. And we needed something that would allow us to respond to changes quickly. Alma and Primo VE as library managed systems were ideal for meeting this business need. And after quite a bit of tinkering, our solution involved 3 configurations: electronic collection public notes, general electronic services, and display logic rules. So our first step was to add a public note at the electronic collection level, instructing UWA users to sign into OneSearch. The public notes field is compatible with HTML, and so we used HTML to make our note more prominent and added links to our libguides where necessary. This public note displays in the View It area of the full Primo VE record to all users. Moving to the fulfillment area of Alma configuration, we used a general electronic service public note to display the actual sensitive password information. Once again, we used HTML to make the public note stand out or to link to other resources where necessary. We indicated that we wanted the public note to display in the View It and Get It sections of the full Primo VE record, and we configured the general electronic service so that this second public note only displayed once the user had signed into OneSearch. And we configured 1 general electronic service for each electronic resource which needed the password information displayed. So we're sticking with the general electronic service. Currently, we're looking at the service details tab, but if we then move to the service availability rules, we added an input and an output for the general electronic service. MMSID was our input, and our output was to display the general electronic service, including that public note which contained the sensitive password information. And so this step linked the bibliographic record for the electronic collection to the general electronic service using MMSID. It's important to note, if you do have deduped records in Primo VE, which have merged the bibliographic records for, say, physical and electronic holdings, you will need to create an additional rule for the physical holdings MMSID. So within 1 general electronic service, you may have 2 general electronic service rules. 1 which lists the electronic holdings MMSID and 1 which lists the physical holdings MMSID, by way of an example. So the third configuration we implemented for each electronic resource was a display logic rule. So we do have some users who have the ability to sign into OneSearch, but they're not necessarily authorised to access these electronic resources. For example, reciprocal borrowers or our alumni. This step allowed us to control who sees the public note containing the sensitive password information, and we excluded specific Alma user groups from seeing our general electronic service, including the public note. This does mean that our unauthorised users will see the first public note at the electronic collection level, which asks them to sign in. But once they do sign in, the second public note from the general electronic service does not appear. Going forward, we would like to improve this experience for our unauthorised users, either by updating the wording of our first public note or by creating additional general electronic services and display logic rules which provide specific messaging for these users. So what does it look like in the end? This is an example from our OneSearch record. So once you've signed into OneSearch, an authorised user, for example, a current staff or student, would see the sensitive password information as a second public note. So in this example for Cambridge Structural Database Systems, that first public note asking users to sign in, that's sitting at the electronic collection level. And then the second public note, which actually has the sensitive information, that's sitting at the general electronic services level. So how did we implement this? Well, we implemented it via a sprint in which Louise, Sonja and I blocked out one day and we updated the configurations for each electronic resource. At the time, we were working from rough notes on the configuration, but the configurations required have now been documented formally in a procedure. And we're more than happy to share this procedure if anyone's interested. The sprint method was ideal as it reduced the period of time in which password information was displayed using two different methods. So via the password information pages and then also via the public notes in OneSearch. If we're honest, another reason for the sprint was that the solution was determined very close to our deadline imposed by UWA IT. The sprint process was very collaborative. So we had some staff working from home, some staff working on campus, and Microsoft Teams was crucial for allowing immediate feedback and knowledge sharing. So Louise, Sonja and I shared HTML code, screenshots, and asked each other to test the configurations via Microsoft Teams messages. I think a great example of just how important Teams was to us, I noticed that we sent 108 Teams messages to each other during that one-day sprint. So in conclusion, the external driver of changes within UWA IT led us to a method of delivering sensitive password information, which we feel will be more sustainable in the long term. This method reduces our dependence upon external departments to provide access to the electronic resources which we manage. The method is very flexible in that we can easily update the information provided now that they have been configured. So say if our corporate key changes when we renew or steps to access change, all we need to do is update the text in those public notes. The solution builds upon the expertise of UWA Library staff while also encouraging knowledge sharing across our department. And so I do want to provide a big thank you to Rashmi Madan, our Manager in Collection Access Services, and Louise Driscoll, Coordinator of Subscriptions, whose knowledge of Alma allowed us to find this solution. That's all from me. Thank you very much for listening, and please let us know if you have any questions, either via the chat or later via email.
Thanks, Siobhan. So far we have one question in the chat. The collection public note sign in to access would need to be attached to a viable collection URL. What does this link to for your users?
So we are say it again, sorry, for the URL, what's the URL at the electronic collection level?
Yeah, I think so. It's referring to the sign in to access. So I think it's the first one. Louise has just responded, the collection URL goes to the resource.
Yeah, so it does go through the resource. Often it'll be that there will be, say, a sign-in page. And so maybe say we're going through to Tech Street and there'll be a login page, and then the collection or the public note will then have the username and password that the user needs to enter, say if they were on the Tech Street page.
Okay, and I think that's it for questions. Thank you very much, Siobhan.
No, thank you.